A pedal 6/4 chord serves to embellish a root position major or minor triad. In musical analysis, we use the term pedal to refer to a pitch that is sustained over time in a given voice, even as other voices move elsewhere. So the pedal 6/4 chord gets its name from the fact that the bass note stays put while two upper voices engage in what we'll see as a simple stepwise motion upward and then back downward. The two upper voices we're talking about are whichever ones from the initial triad sound a fifth above the bass and a third above the bass. Following the initial triad, these voices travel up by step while the bass holds its position. This motion extends the original intervals to a sixth above and a fourth above, respectively, hence the 6/4 chord. Analyzing this new chord, we'll see that the sustained bass note now serves as a chordal fifth, just as we'd expect in any 6/4 chord. Now, as I said before, the pedal 6/4 is really just an embellishing harmony, so the two voices that stepped upward will typically follow by immediately stepping back down into their original positions. We can see then that the pedal 6/4 is necessarily surrounded on either side by identical voicings of a root position triad. I'll also note that what we are calling a pedal 6/4 is referred to in other places as a neighboring 6/4. As I stated, the pedal label refers to the stationary nature of the bass. Calling it a neighboring 6/4 refers instead to the activity in those two moving voices above. Neighboring motion happens anytime a voice walks away from a note by step and then steps right back into that original note. The two moving voices create the 6/4 chord by visiting each of their upper neighbors, after which they step back down. Whether you encounter references to pedal 6/4s or to neighboring 6/4s, recognize that those are just different terms referring to precisely the same kind of harmonic activity. In our four-part writing, we'll prepare for a pedal 6/4 by starting with a root position major triad or a root position minor triad. For our purposes, we'll limit our starting triads to 1 chords and 5 chords. Now, it's crucial to ensure that the root of this initial chord is doubled by the bass and one of the upper three voices. Alternative doublings will not work in creating smooth motion for our pedal 6/4. Now, the bass and its doubling voice will have the simplest jobs of all. Both of these voices will stay put on their initial pitches. The two remaining upper voices will begin by filling out the triad with the fifth and the third. To create our pedal 6/4, these two voices will simultaneously move up by step. Now the pedal 6/4 chord itself is achieved. The intervals above our sustained bass note include a sixth and a fourth, as well as the octave doubling that's been around since the beginning of this motion. All that's left to do is to return those two moving voices back to their original positions, returning us to the same voicing of the triad from which we began. We'll want to make sure that we label each of the chords involved in this exercise. The surrounding triads share the same label, of course, because they will be exactly the same chord. The pedal 6/4 itself will require a different Roman numeral, as we can see by simply analyzing the members of the chord. The pedal 6/4 chord that is sandwiched between 1 chords is always a 4/6/4, and the pedal 6/4 that appears between identical 5 chords is always a 1/6/4. Remember, our use of any 6/4 chord must always be explicitly purposeful, therefore underneath the Roman numeral label we will include the word pedal, or as I stated before, these could also be labeled neighboring. Take a listen to this example in which I've written a phrase that uses pedal 6/4 chords originating from both a 1 chord and a 5 chord. So a quick summary of pedal 6/4 chords. A pedal 6/4 occurs between identical root position triads. These must be major or minor triads that serve as either the 1 chord or the dominant 5 triad. The bass is doubled in one of the 3 upper voices. Both the bass and the doubling voice maintain the same pitch throughout. The remaining 2 voices, which begin as the 5th and the 3rd of the original triad, leave that original triad by stepping upward, thus creating our 6/4. They conclude their activity by stepping back down into their original pitches. If the original triad was a 1 chord, then the pedal 6/4 will be a 4/6/4. If the original triad was a 5 chord, then the pedal 6/4 will be a 1/6/4. We need to make sure to include the word pedal or neighboring underneath the 6/4 chord's Roman numeral label.